Looking up from my papers, I took one last look at the man I once knew, but he was already gone, leaving me with only tears. I switched the radio to a late-night talk show about Bigfoot and UFO sightings. The same song has been repeating for several hours now, and I'm tired of it. Why, you may ask? Yes, because it evokes painful memories of the woman I left behind. Let me go back to the beginning. My name is Stan Shipman, and I've been married to Lucy Dalton for 5 years now. We were high school sweethearts, and I sincerely believed that we were destined to be together. We tied the knot right after graduating from high school, and this decision, as I now understand it, was a huge mistake. Despite our deep love for each other, everything quickly fell apart financially. Everything was stable for us. I had been working as a welder for as long as I can remember. From a very young age, my father, an experienced welder, passed on his knowledge to me. I've been joining metal since I was old enough to handle a welding machine safely. Although as a child, I dreamed of accompanying my father to a construction site, the rules of the corporation and insurance policies did not allow me to do this. Nevertheless, my father made products at home and always found tasks for me. This hands-on experience was invaluable to my learning, and I enjoyed every moment. After graduating from high school, I received formal education in the field of welding, but quickly lost interest in classes as I was already well-versed in the subject. After impressing all the teachers, I received a certificate and immediately started working. Thanks to my extensive experience in manufacturing, installation, and welding, I was able to receive a high salary, especially for work outside the state, which required business trips. I even did underwater welding, which turned out to be a very profitable business. Thanks to my income, I was able to get Lucy into college, and now she works as a paralegal at a prestigious law firm in the city. So why am I running now, and why am I driving on the freeway at night? The answer to this question lies in the woman I married. Lucy, who was a beacon of kindness and warmth in her younger years, has transformed over time. Despite this, I still had a deep affection for her and willingly supported her in college. Her parents doubted my ability to finance her education without going into debt, but I proved them wrong. When she graduated from college, they were proud not only of me but of her, knowing that she graduated without student loan debt weighing down her future. When she started working at McMaster in Fredericks, the situation changed for the worse. Thanks to me, at first, for the first couple of months, everything was tolerable. But over time, the situation worsened. It all started with the fact that some of her female colleagues had a negative influence on her, to put it mildly. Lucy started joining them for weekly bachelorette parties on Wednesdays. I didn't mind at first, as she usually returned home early enough for us to spend the evening together. I often disappeared at the construction site, but over time, I noticed that my wife, Lucy, began to leave the house on Wednesday and Friday evenings. It really upset me because on Fridays, we usually had a date night. When I brought it up with Lucy, she just suggested we meet on Saturdays, saying she deserved to spend time with friends. Over time, she began to stay longer and longer, sometimes returning only early on a Saturday morning. When I tried to call her to find out how she was feeling, the phone always went to voicemail. I reached a breaking point and decided to deal with this problem. "We need to talk," I said one Saturday morning as we sat over a cup of coffee. "About what?" she asked. "About your Friday night parties," I replied. "We used to meet on Fridays, but lately, you've been walking in until almost 4 in the morning. What's happening?" "I hardly ever see you," I asked in disbelief. She explained that she and several girls from the office like to drink, relax, and sometimes dance. "I know that such clubs usually close no later than 1 o'clock in the morning, but you're coming much later. What's happening? Are you dating someone else?" I asked. "Of course not," she replied with a deep sigh. "If you really need to know, sometimes we have a snack after that, yes, but before 4 in the morning," she admitted. "Well, this kind of behavior has to stop," I insisted. "You need to make a decision. You're either my wife or their friend." "Anyway, they see you more often than I do," I said. "I don't mind you spending one evening with the girls, but I can't help feeling like you're taking advantage of me," I said. She apologized and offered not to meet with them on Fridays anymore. "I think that would be a good idea," I replied. "Maybe then we can spend more time together," she agreed and headed for the shower. While she was busy, I discreetly took her phone out of her purse and installed a phone search app. It hurt me to do it, but I felt the need to do it for my own peace of mind. Weeks went by, and everything seemed to be going well. But unfortunately, Lucy quickly returned to her old habits. She returned to her usual walks on Wednesdays and Fridays, and I realized that I had to get to the truth. I turned to the phone finder app to track her location on Friday after work. I cleaned up and headed to the club where she was hanging out with her friends. This place looked more like a bar with a DJ and a dance floor than a traditional club. As soon as I entered, I noticed Lucy sitting with a group of 4 women and 3 men. I couldn't help but notice that Lucy was very friendly with the guy sitting next to her, a little too friendly if you understand me. Moreover, she was wearing a much more provocative outfit than the one she was wearing before. They were so engrossed in each other that they didn't even notice me walking up to their table. As I got closer, everyone at the table, except Lucy, looked at me. The guy sitting next to her, with a note of aggression in his tone, asked what I wanted. "I just finished work and I want to have a beer," I replied, causing Lucy to look at me in surprise. It was a rather unexpected scene that I encountered in this bar. "Are you going to introduce me to your friends?" I asked. Lucy looked around anxiously, her discomfort was obvious. "That's it. This is Stan," she finally introduced me, almost hesitantly. "He's my husband," I greeted everyone with a sarcastic tone. "Well, hello everyone." My gaze fell on her bare left hand, devoid of wedding or engagement rings. "Did you forget something?" I asked. She noticed my look and quickly replied, "I took off my rings so I wouldn't lose them." I didn't believe her excuse for a second, but I decided not to escalate the situation. "I understand," I replied calmly. The man sitting next to her got to his feet, his chest puffed out in a sign of bravado. Holding out his hand, he introduced himself as Jake Rollins. He mentioned that he and Lucy are colleagues who work closely with each other, and this statement drew chuckles from everyone in the room, with the exception of Lucy. Trying to assert his superiority, Jake squeezed my hand tightly in response. I squeezed it back, deciding not to let him mock me. Noticing the pain in his expression, I relented. "I was just about to ask your wife to dance, if you don't mind," he said gently, massaging his hand. I looked at Lucy for confirmation. "Do you mind?" I asked. She met my gaze and nodded slowly. Sensing an opportunity to get some information, I gave him the go-ahead, warning him, "Just don't forget about the hands. Remember, she is my wife, and I will look out for you." He nodded understandingly. As Lucy rose from her seat, I took Jake's old seat and ordered a beer, as most of the others had already left. The girl next to me said, "She doesn't belong to you, you know." Curious, I asked her name. "Marie," she replied. "Marie Compton." I was Lucy's mentor. I teased her, imitating her official introduction. "So, Marie Compton, who are you to give me marriage advice?" "I'm Lucy's friend, as I said before, and I support her," she said after taking a sip of her drink. "Colleagues admire her work and have high hopes for her future," she added. I didn't like her arrogant attitude, and I wondered what false information she might have given Lucy. "Well, Marie," I replied, "I never claimed to control Lucy, but I am her husband. If something is affecting our marriage, I need to be aware." "The truth is, Stan," Marie replied, "Lucy needs to broaden her horizons. All she's ever known is college. And do you think she needs to expand her horizons and try something new? Maybe she needs to spread her wings a little bit. I take my wedding vows seriously and believe that Lucy will do the same. Do you have any experience in marriage?" I asked, noticing the absence of a ring on her finger. "Let me make a wild guess. Your husband found out about your infidelity, right?" I asked. She shrugged her shoulders, unperturbed. "So what? I don't belong to anyone. I do whatever I want with whoever I want," Marie replied. "Well, Lucy doesn't belong to anyone, and I expect you to respect that," I insisted. She giggled. "Of course, keep living in your fantasies," she replied. At that moment, Jake and Lucy returned from the dance floor. I got up to make room for Lucy and put her between Marie and me. I sat down in my seat before Jake could sit down next to her. I noticed that he didn't look too pleased, but I didn't care. So, Lucy mentioned that you're a welder. What is the current rate for welders? Marie asked. $15 an hour, but I actually earn more than $35 an hour, especially when I work underwater, I replied. Did Lucy tell you that I funded her college tuition? I decided to change the subject. So, you're paying off her student loans? Jake asked. No, she doesn't have any student loans because I covered all her expenses. I even bought her this new Toyota, I added. Wow, I didn't know welders made that kind of money, Jake exclaimed. Obviously, I'm doing something wrong. I bet you have a lot of women on the side when you're on business trips, Jake said, nudging me with his elbow. Embarrassed, I replied, no, actually, I work long hours when I'm at a construction site. I take my marriage vows seriously, just like Marie said. I have no doubt about it, Jake said smugly. Annoyed by this conversation, I turned to my wife and asked, Did you drive here today? Yes, she replied. I've had enough entertainment for today, so I'm going home. I hope you'll follow me, I said to Lucy, getting up. I accidentally spilled my almost full ice-cold beer on Jake's lap, soaking the crotch of his khaki trousers. Oops, I'm sorry. It looks like you're going to have to change your pants when you get home, I said, laughing. Angry, Jake stood up and seemed ready to strike. You better make sure he hits the target, buddy, because I'm going to beat you when I get up, I growled. When he saw the determination in my eyes, he backed away. This is a great solution, I told him. I looked at my wife. Are you coming? I'm right behind you, she replied softly. I could feel Marie's gaze on me. If looks could kill, I'd be underground by now. Without looking back, I left the bar. A few minutes after me, Lucy drove up to the entrance. Well done, I thought. I took a beer from the fridge and waited for her in the living room. She burst in, her face flushed. What was that? You've completely confused me. Are you following me? What's the matter? What is it? She asked, catching me off guard. I quickly shook my head, denying any ulterior motives. No, I just wanted to have a beer, I replied, trying to look calm. In fact, I was shocked to see her with colleagues, knowing that I had just lied to her for the first time. It was a strange feeling to realize that it was me who should be ashamed. To see my wife, the woman I loved more than anything in the world, laughing and acting like a flirtatious schoolgirl with someone else, was simply unbearable. It hurt me when I noticed that you took off your wedding ring. You seemed ashamed of being married to me. Is that how you feel? I asked sadly. Her expression softened as she sat down next to me. No, of course not, she reassured me. I have to work closely with these people, especially Jake, who I work with the most, Lucy began to say. And Marie, what is her role? I asked. She holds a higher position in the company than I do. She guides me, Lucy replied in disbelief. Does this include marriage advice? I asked. What do you mean? She asked innocently. While you were dancing with Jake, she lectured me on the importance of expanding horizons and taking risks, I explained. I jokingly asked if infidelity was included in this concept, and she hesitantly admitted that yes, she had entered and could continue to enter. Tell me the truth, have you been cheating on me? I asked abruptly, changing the subject. No, she replied, avoiding my gaze. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was lying. I made it clear to her that, for me, infidelity is an excuse to break off a relationship. Marie suggested that you might be with someone else during your absence from home. Is there any truth in this? I asked again. No, she replied quickly. You and I have been together since the 6th grade. Have I ever cheated on you? I asked. She shook her head. No, she replied softly. I have never betrayed you, and I will not betray you. You're too dear to me to do something so hurtful. Besides, when I'm not around, I work all the time. I wasn't kidding when I told Jake that I work long hours, sometimes up to 16 hours a day. You know it's true. How do you think you manage to pay for college? This is in addition to our regular accounts. I was saving money to make a decent down payment on the house. So you can go and tell Marie to shove her nonsense away and stop talking about things she doesn't know anything about, I said threateningly. Were you very rude to her? Lucy asked. No, not at all, but I won't stand for the nonsense she's filling your head with. The same goes for Jake. I don't trust any of them. Did you know that she got divorced twice because of infidelity? I said, leaving Lucy in shock. How do you know that? She asked, curiosity in her tone. She gave me this information and looked very pleased with herself. I got the feeling that the two of them were hatching a plan, and you were somehow involved in it. Did you do something wrong? I asked. No, Stan, I didn't, she assured me. Just what, simple? I continued. I like spending time with them, she admitted. I like spending time with you, I replied. Do you think you could spend more time with your husband? I asked. Of course, she replied, hugging me. I'm so sorry, she whispered softly. It's okay, you know. I've only dreamed of 3 things in my life, I said. About what? She asked. First of all, to marry you. Secondly, to become the best welder in the city. And thirdly, to create a family with you, I said, grinning. She snuggled closer to me. Well, you have the first 2 points. Maybe we should focus on the third one, Lucy suggested playfully. I'd love to, I replied. We rushed into the bedroom and spent the night in each other's arms. For the next couple of months, life seemed to calm down. Lucy stayed at home on Fridays, and I made a conscious effort to give her more attention and affection. I decided not to bring up Marie or Jake, relying on Lucy to make the right choice. So one Friday evening, I returned home and saw that the house was dimly lit, and candles were burning on the dining room table. The aroma of lasagna filled the air, indicating that Lucy was up to something. When I entered the dining room, I saw that our best china was on the table. When I turned around, there she was, my beautiful wife, in one of the shortest dresses I'd ever seen. She flaunted her legs, knowing that I wouldn't be able to resist. The dress barely covered her assets, and the front consisted of only 2 panels that left nothing to the imagination. She wrapped her arms around me and bit into my lips with a deep kiss. Do you like what you see? She purred. I only nodded in agreement. Oh, yes, I replied, admiring her amazing figure. I was thrilled. Tonight was supposed to be unforgettable. Why? I asked. It's a surprise. Go freshen up and then sit down while I cook dinner, Lucy said. Following her instructions, I headed to the bedroom to change into my work suit. After washing up, I returned to the dining room and saw that Lucy was already serving her famous lasagna, accompanied by glasses of wine. I couldn't help but smile at the dish of cheese, meat, and mushrooms in front of me. Lucy's cooking had never left me indifferent, and her lasagna had always been the highlight of any dinner. I can't decide which is more tempting, you or lasagna, I said, sitting down in my seat. She giggled and joined me at the table. I hope you enjoy both today, she replied with a grin. I began to eat the lasagna greedily, savoring every bite of its delicious taste. I sipped my wine, trying not to overdo it before the upcoming intimacy. When I finished my meal, a strange feeling came over me. When I tried to get up, I realized that I was too dizzy and almost tripped. I looked at Lucy puzzled. What have you done? I found my voice with difficulty and tried to speak, but it turned out to be a difficult task. Before I knew it, I collapsed on the floor. When I came to, I found myself in our bedroom, naked and tied to a chair. Confusion and anger overwhelmed me, and I demanded to know what was going on. What the hell is going on? I shouted. Soon, Lucy came into the bedroom, followed by Marie. What kind of nonsense is this? I demanded, desperately trying to get up from my chair. I'm very sorry, dear, Marie replied. What kind of pity is that? I asked, feeling frustrated. I want you to admire your wife's height, Marie explained calmly. Did you drug me and tie me to this chair? I accused. Of course, Marie admitted. Lucy warned me that you would never agree to this voluntarily, so I gave her something to put you to sleep for a while. This way, you can watch your wife cheat on you, and you won't be able to do anything to stop her," Marie said sarcastically. I stared at Lucy, fuming like I'd never done before. "How could you agree to this? Do you understand what this will lead to?" I asked. "I'm sorry, but Marie insisted that this is the only way out. Please believe me, it won't affect our relationship in any way. It's just physical contact. I still love you." Moreover, Marie mentioned that many married men fantasize about such a scenario, Lucy said. "I refuse to put up with it, and it will have an absolutely negative impact on our relationship. I have made it clear that I will not tolerate betrayal in any form," I said, trying to reason with her. "What is this device that you have imprisoned me in?" I demanded. "I assure you, I never imagined anything like this. If you don't immediately release me from the chair and remove this device, our relationship will come to an end. Please give him a chance, it's just for one night." "I'll release you when we're done," Lucy begged. I shook my head in disbelief. "You're not as stupid as you look, Lucy." "Let me go now," I said. Marie came up to me, holding something in her hand. Before I could react, she put a gag in my mouth, silencing me. She grinned, teasing me to keep quiet. I struggled with the knots, desperately trying to break free, but to no avail. Grinning maliciously, Marie left the room, leaving me alone with Jake and another man from her office, who were watching me with interest. Well, this little rascal is already ready for initiation. "Oh, it might cheer you up," Jake said with a grin. He leaned back and gave me a good old punch in the face, and one more for reliability. I felt the taste of blood in my mouth and already began to see the darkness in front of me. "Don't touch him. You promised you wouldn't hurt him. He owes me for ruining my pants. Now he will be sitting in the front row when I take care of his wife," Jake said, pulling off Lucy's dress. For the next hour, the three of them happily did everything they could, while Jake wrote everything down. "Did you enjoy the show, dear?" Marie asked sarcastically. They all laughed. "It wasn't really that bad," Jake said. Jake leaned over and whispered in my ear, "If you say or do anything, I swear I'll make your life hell." He said that my wife now belongs to him and that he can come whenever he pleases and do whatever he pleases. He stood up and gestured to the other man. "Let's go," he said. When they left, Marie came up to me and warned me, "Don't even think about creating problems." Jake meant what he said. It was just a warm-up compared to what we can actually do with you. "Is that clear?" Marie said. She stood up and looked into Lucy's eyes. "Wait until I leave, then let him go. If he gets you in trouble, call me." Lucy nodded in agreement after Marie left. Lucy pulled the gag out of my mouth and cut the ropes tying me to the chair. Before she could speak, I got dressed quickly and went to the phone. "What are you doing?" "What is it?" she asked as I dialed the emergency number. "I may be a welder, but I'm not going to fall without a fight," I replied. I was fully aware of the gravity of the situation. I knew that the actions of her and her company were not only wrong but also extremely illegal. Determined to get justice, I decided to go to the authorities. That evening, Lucy's eyes widened in horror as she realized the gravity of the situation. "I just reported to the police what was done to me," I said. In a panic, Lucy tried to get out her phone to call Marie, but I quickly snatched it from her. I also took the keys from her purse to prevent her from fleeing the scene of the crime. Despite her desperate attempts to retrieve the items, I managed to snatch them from her hands and put them safely in my pocket. After making the call, I calmly sat down and waited for the arrival of law enforcement agencies. I was prepared for the fact that they would want to examine me and take fluid samples from my body for evidence. "Please don't press charges. I don't want to be sent to prison," Lucy begged with tears in her eyes. "Believe me, considering what you've done, prison is the safest place for you right now. If it were up to me, you would never have seen the inside of a prison cell. Moreover, I would have dealt with you myself. Unfortunately, I can't afford to go to jail, so it's time for you to pack your things. The police will be here any minute," I said threateningly. "You heard what Jake and Marie said. They're serious," Lucy threatened. "They better not mess with me," I warned. As she hesitantly began to dress, Lucy saw the seriousness in my expression and quickly complied, knowing it was better not to test my strength. While she was getting dressed in silence, I felt her phone vibrate in my pocket. When I took it out, I saw a message from Marie asking if everything was okay. I replied, "He's not thrilled, but he'll do it," hoping to deceive her. Returning the phone to my pocket, I interrupted the conversation with the sound of police sirens on the street. Lucy entered the front room just as the police arrived. I greeted them when they entered the door. One look at my expression was enough for them to know that something was wrong. While one of the officers started recording my account of events, the other went to talk to Lucy in the bedroom. The officer who recorded my testimony quickly called an ambulance and collected samples from my face, carefully placing them in evidence bags. After a brief conversation outside, both officers returned, and the second officer led Lucy out of the bedroom, shackling her hands behind her back. Tears streamed down her face as she pleaded, "Please don't let them take me away. It was just a joke." I couldn't look at her and turned away. At that time, 2 more police cars arrived at the scene, followed by an ambulance. A female officer appeared in the doorway and escorted Lucy out. The officer who took my statement informed me that Lucy had been arrested for unlawful imprisonment, the use of illegal drugs, and coercion to enter into an intimate relationship. They suggested that I go to the hospital to get tested and determine which substances were applied to me. I didn't think about refusing for long, but in the end, I agreed. The more evidence we have against those who did this, the better. "You definitely need to get a protective order," the officer advised me. He handed me a business card with the name of a lawyer from the local district attorney's office and a phone number. "I already called her, and she said she would meet you at the hospital," he informed me gratefully. I went with the paramedics, who quickly examined me. On the way, they examined me in the emergency room, took samples from my face, put me in order, and took blood and urine samples. I was just beginning to feel some relief from the painkillers I was given when a well-dressed woman entered the exam room. "Stan Shipman, what's the matter? How are you feeling?" she asked. "I feel better, just a little tired." "They gave me something for the pain," I replied. "Mr. Shipman, the officers who brought you in have informed me of the situation. I was also informed that another woman and 2 men involved in the attack were detained," Linda Calloway said. "The suspects are currently in the county jail awaiting a hearing. I asked them not to be released on bail, but given the influence of the company they are associated with, they may be released on their own recognizance. To protect you, I took the initiative and applied for a protective order," she said. "Thanks for the support. Do you think it will change anything?" I asked. "It's hard to say. Maybe it will help, but there are no guarantees," she replied. I nodded in understanding. "If it helps even a little bit, they will be in custody at least until Monday morning when they will be charged," Linda said. "I understand. I am an ordinary person with no influential connections. When it comes down to it, I'm left alone," I replied sadly. "You have me, Mr. Shipman," she said firmly. "As long as you don't make any stupid decisions. But you should consider hiring a divorce lawyer if you don't intend to stay married to your wife," Linda added. "No. It's over with her," I replied. She nodded in agreement. "I was informed that they intend to leave you overnight for observation. Perhaps this is for the best, considering that your apartment is now considered a crime scene. It will take them some time to thoroughly search everything and collect evidence. By the way, do you happen to have a weapon?" Linda asked. I shook my head in response. "No, I don't have it," I told her. After my younger brother accidentally shot himself in the leg with his father's .22 caliber pistol, he decided to get rid of all his pistols. "I thought it would be safer not to have any," she nodded understandingly. "Just so you know, there are gun prohibition laws in this state," Linda said. "I understand, but I have the right to defend myself in my own home," I replied. Then the officer asked about illegal drugs, to which I shook my head. "I don't have them, but I can't speak for my wife," I confessed. The officer nodded and said she would pass on this information. After she left, I dozed off and then woke up in a private room. The medical staff took care of me by giving me more medicine, after which I fell asleep again for the whole night. The next morning, after I had breakfast, my parents came to see me. They sat in silence while I told them all the details of what had happened. When I finished, my father's anger became palpable. "What are you going to do next, son?" he asked. I'm going to file for divorce from this woman, I informed him. He supported me by nodding in agreement. I'm happy for you. Is there anything we can do to help? He suggested. I could use a recommendation from a good divorce lawyer, I replied. I know a few. Let me look for them, he assured. And when you're ready to leave the hospital, just call me. I'll make sure you get home safely. In the meantime, focus on rest and taking care of yourself. Just don't do anything stupid, my father warned. I won't do anything, I assured him. Yes, I know, he replied with a grin. That's why I warned you not to do anything stupid. We all laughed before they said goodbye and Mom hugged me before they left. Soon after, Lucy's parents arrived. Our relationship has always been strong, and they were like second parents to me. I told them about the events of the previous night, leaving them shocked and horrified by my daughter's act. I suppose you're going to seek a divorce, Lucy's father said. I just nodded in agreement. I can't bear to live with the consequences of her actions, I confessed to her mother. I understand your feelings and apologize on her behalf. Is there anything we can do to fix the situation? Her mother asked. If Lucy is released from prison, she will need to stay somewhere. The assistant district attorney is seeking a protective order, so she won't be able to return to the apartment, I said. She can stay with us, her mother suggested. Thank you, I replied gratefully. After exchanging parting words, they left. A few hours later, the doctor examined me and declared me fit for discharge. The nurses began to process the paperwork to prepare me for discharge. Anticipating a long process, I called my father to keep him informed. By the time the paperwork was completed, my parents had already returned. Following the nurse's instructions, I was escorted in a wheelchair to the loading dock where Dad's car was waiting. With their help, I got into the car and we set off driving. At the apartment, my father walked me to the door and then said goodbye to me. Remember that if you need anything, I'm always ready to call, he said goodbye. Thanks, Dad, I said. Upon entering the apartment, I examined the surrounding environment. After the police finished searching our house, I realized that it would take a long time to put everything in order. While cleaning, I noticed a message on my answering machine. It simply read dead meat with no other information or introduction. The number was listed as private, which made the message even more mysterious. The sound seemed familiar to me, and after listening to it a few more times, I realized that it was a phrase from an old Rocky movie. It wasn't a man speaking directly into the phone, but rather a quote from a movie. The message was sent by someone who recorded it and played it back over the phone. A few minutes after I realized this, the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw that there was a young attractive brunette standing outside the door. I remembered seeing her at the club when I first met Jake. Not noticing anyone else with her, I had a sudden idea. I took my cell phone out of my shirt pocket, activated the camera, turned on the recording, and then put it back in my pocket. I opened the door, leaving the chain just in case. When she saw a familiar face, she asked, "Mr. Shipman, it's me, Holly Brinkman. I work with your wife," she explained. "May I come in, please?" I hesitated and asked, "Are you alone?" "Yes, I am alone," she confirmed. I closed the door briefly to remove the chain and then invited her inside. As soon as she came in, I shut the door firmly behind her. "How can I help you, Miss Brinkman?" I asked. "Please, call me Holly," she said. "Okay, Holly, what do you need?" I asked when she handed me an envelope from Manila. Curious, I asked, "What's inside?" Holly replied softly, "Just open it, please." I carefully opened the envelope and looked inside, finding several photographs. I put the envelope on the coffee table and quickly went to the kitchen to get a pair of latex gloves. I didn't want to leave fingerprints. Back in the living room, I took out the photos and was shocked by what I saw. The picture showed a deceased man kneeling with his hands tied behind his back. In another photo, the same man was captured from a different angle. I turned to Holly, confused. "Who is this?" I asked with tears in her eyes. She replied, "That was my husband, Brian." "Have you reported this?" I asked. Holly nodded solemnly. "Yes, the authorities admitted that he had harmed himself." I was taken aback. How? I asked. You don't understand, she began. The company we work for has powerful connections in shadow circles. They have significant influence on the police and keep a number of judges on the hook, she said. Ah, now I understand. Did Jake set this up? I asked. In response, she just shrugged her shoulders. It's hard to say for sure. Maybe he was behind it, she suggested. So why do you keep working for this company? I asked. She sighed. I don't have any other options, she admitted. Let me guess, you're not just a lawyer's secretary, are you? I asked. She nodded solemnly. They treated you the same way they treated me, except that my husband took revenge on Jake and paid for it in full, she said with tears in her eyes. In fact, are you acting as a victim of the company? I asked. She nodded affirmatively. My responsibilities include meeting the needs of lawyers and their clients, she said. What exactly is Marie doing in this situation? I asked. She replied, she's actually the manager coordinating all our assignments. Then Lucy was added to her registry? I confirmed. Yes, she confirmed. After examining the contents of the envelope, I found a folded piece of paper. When I opened it, I found a note inside. It looked like the letters were cut out of magazines and newspapers and glued to paper. I almost laughed but suppressed the urge. The note began as follows: Stan Shipman, step back, otherwise, it could be you. I looked at Holly. Have you read this? I asked her. She shook her head. No, it was dropped off at my apartment this morning with a note for me to deliver it to this address, she said. Are you ready to tell the district attorney about this? I asked. She shook her head. I want to live in peace, if you don't mind. These people are really evil, especially Marie, she said with fear. How many people in your firm know about all this? I asked. Almost everyone above the middle level, she replied. I nodded in understanding. Good, Holly. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. I'm sorry about everything, you seem like a really good woman, I said sincerely. Thanks for saying that, Holly replied. Have a nice day, Holly, I said, opening the door for her. I watched her carefully as she left the room and made sure that there was no one else in sight. After closing the door behind her, I felt that the situation was becoming more and more difficult because of the voicemail and the impending threats. Although I have already made the decision to divorce Lucy, these new developments have significantly raised the stakes. The thought of what I was planning to do with Jake made me shudder. Knowing that Lucy would soon want to break up with me, I dialed Linda's personal phone number, which she had thoughtfully written on the back of her business card. This is Linda Calloway, she replied, her voice flat and calm. I informed her about the voicemail and the envelope that had just been delivered, stressing that this event was a turning point. I need you to bring this to me immediately, she ordered. After receiving her address and ending the conversation, I realized that I had to disappear quickly. I hurriedly packed up the things that should have been enough for a few days and threw them into the back seat of my Ford. Remembering the cage Lucy had used on me the night before, I grabbed it and loaded it into the truck. I had an idea that I would like to implement. After loading the necessary welding tools into the truck, I called my boss to inform him about the situation and asked for a day off. He granted my request without hesitation, saying, "The job is done, and you still have a lot of vacations, so take as much time as you need to deal with it." Grateful for your understanding, I made sure that everything was in order, locked the apartment, and set off on my way. Less than half an hour later, I arrived at Linda's apartment. Her reaction to the photos and the note I brought was shocking. In addition, I had a video recording of my conversation with the woman who reported the disturbing news. Would you like to see it? I asked, taking out my phone to show her the video. Oh my God, she sighed when the video ended. It explains so much. Could you send me a copy? I handed her the phone so she could save the video. When she finished, I noticed that I still had Lucy's phone in my pocket. I handed it to her, and she asked, "What is it?" I explained, "This is Lucy's phone. I put it in my pocket the night Jake attacked me. I completely forgot about it until today." Maybe there's something worth investigating here, I suggested. I'll ask our team to sort this out, she said, leaning back in her chair. But I think I should contact the state or federal authorities if Holly's statements are true. I can't rely on the local police department, Linda added. She looked at me and asked, "What are you going to do?" "I'm planning to leave town for a while," I replied. She suggested, "How about taking protection or joining a witness protection program?" I chuckled. Yes, of course. I refused his offer, fearing that Jake and his friends would find out about my whereabouts. Instead, I just said, "No thanks." I left without deciding on my destination. I needed to escape from the chaos for a while. I withdrew a large amount of money from the bank and drove aimlessly, fearing surveillance. Thoughts of the man who had been dealt with for not succumbing to Jack and Marie's demands were spinning in my head. I knew that I had to be careful as I could easily find myself in a difficult situation. It was well after midnight when an idea struck me. I decided to stop at the recreation area and make a call. I hoped it wasn't too late, and fortunately, it wasn't. Yes, the other end of the line answered. "Helly, Dave, it's me, Stan," I said. Dave was an old friend of mine with whom I collaborated on many projects. We've always gotten along well. "Stan, old devil, what's going on?" Dave exclaimed. "I had a little problem, and I was wondering if I could stay at your place for a few days," I said. "Sure, buddy, don't be shy," he replied. "Just do me a favor and grab a couple of beers on the way if you don't mind." "No problem. I'll see you in a few hours," I assured my friend before hanging up. Feeling calmer, I got on the freeway and drove north. On the way, I noticed a convenience store and made a short stop to buy the requested 6 packs of beer, as well as a styrofoam basket and ice to keep them cold. I also decided to have a coffee and buy a couple packs of cigarettes before I hit the road again. I usually abstain from smoking in the apartment, but knowing that Dave smokes, I decided to make an exception. In the end, he let me stay with him, so I felt indebted to him. Dave Brolin was considerably older than me by about 15 years and was professionally involved with my father. That's how we crossed paths. He stayed with us several times when he worked in our neighborhood, and over time, he became something of an older brother to me. I gained valuable knowledge working with him in my father's store, and I saw that he had to face considerable difficulties as a child. His father worked in shipyards where constant exposure to asbestos eventually led to his death from complications related to the development of the disease in the body. After his father's death, his younger sister, Beverly, took over the role of nurse for their mother, who died of stomach cancer about a year ago. I had known Bev for a while and thought she was a simple and attractive girl with the charming appearance of a neighborhood girl. Despite my admiration for her, I have never had a romantic relationship with her out of respect for my friendship with Dave and his father. I was already in love with Lucy when Bev and I met again. We had a great relationship, more like a sibling relationship. We were constantly making fun of each other. We hadn't seen each other for a long time, and I was interested to see how she had changed during that time. Dave, like me, got married young but eventually divorced after catching his wife with a colleague. He never got married, but he started dating again. Now he spends most of his time taking care of Beverly, who now lives with him. Of course, Beverly claims that she's the only one who cares about him. I arrived at Dave's 2-story log cabin around 2:30 in the morning. I quickly packed my things in an icebox and then met Dave on the porch. "I hope you have a beer for us," he said with a grin, handing him a pack of cigarettes. He opened the door and helped me carry the rest of my things into the house. As I was carrying the icebox into the kitchen, I noticed a stunning blonde in a long t-shirt and short pajama bottoms coming down the stairs. "Who is this beautiful blonde?" I asked, to which Dave giggled, and she replied, "You know who I am." I blinked and realized it was Beverly. She didn't look at all like the skinny girl I remembered. Her legs were toned, her breasts were fuller, and her hair reached almost to her back. "Beverly?" I asked, perplexed. "Of course, it's me, you idiot," she replied sarcastically. "Why are you here so early in the morning? Did Lucy catch you cheating and kick you out or something like that?" "No, not really," I said with a note of irritation, but Dave's expression softened as her gaze settled on me. "I'm really sorry, Stan," she said, looking at my bruised face. What happened? Are you okay? I shook my head. Not really, that's why I'm here, Dave interjected. Why don't you grab a beer and tell us everything? I nodded, took 3 bottles of beer, and headed to the front room. I handed 1 bottle to Dave and turned to Beverly. Are you sure you're old enough to drink? I teased. She grinned playfully and waved me away, taking the beer from my hands. Spit it out. What's going on between you two? She asked. I feel pretty awkward, I admitted, but we are all adults here, practically a family. You can just tell us, Dave said brotherly. Taking a deep breath, I retold the whole story about Lucy, Marie, and Jake, and then showed them the video of my meeting with Holly. When I finished, there was stunned silence among my friends. Damn, Dave finally spoke up after taking a sip of beer. Do you think they know where you are now? I shook my head. I didn't notice any cars chasing me, and fortunately, we are at the top of this hill. We can see someone coming up here, and I still have the gun that I bought from your dad after Mikey's accident. I hope you still remember how to shoot, Dave asked. I nodded back. Yes, but since then, I have never picked up a weapon, I confessed. Many years ago, my younger brother Michael, also known as Mikey, accidentally shot himself in the leg with his father's .22 caliber pistol. Fortunately, Mikey suffered only minor injuries and made a full recovery. My father was so remorseful about what had happened that he decided to get rid of all his pistols and never buy new ones. Don't worry. I'll show you how to use it. Beverly can help you too, she's become a good shooter, Dave said. I was stunned by Beverly's sudden confidence. She sat up straight and grinned mischievously. Does your father know you're here? She asked. I shook my head. No, I haven't told anyone where I am, but maybe I should tell the assistant district attorney, I replied. Just remember to be careful, Beverly reminded. I didn't plan on coming here until I was on my way, I said. Okay, I'll call your parents and let them know in the morning, Dave said, advising them not to use a mobile phone if possible. It would be nice to turn it off and take out the battery in case there is a tracker on it, he added. Good idea, I replied, turning off the phone and taking out the battery. So, Lucy and her friends will appear before the judge on Monday? Beverly asked. Yes, the arraignment is scheduled for Monday, I confirmed. The district attorney is hoping that the judge will keep them in custody without bail, but after what Holly said, I'm not sure that's going to happen, I replied sadly. You can stay here as long as you need to, Dave said. I have to go back to work in 2 weeks, and I'm leaving, I said. Feel free to stay here as long as you need to, Dave said. I hope the situation will be resolved by then, I said hopefully. Like I said, you can stay here, Dave suggested. Thank you, I really appreciate it, I replied gratefully. If there's anything I can do to help, just let me know, Dave said confidently. Dave looked at Beverly, and a grin spread across his face. I'm sure Bev will be able to take care of you. You're our guest, and your parents have always treated us royally, so why don't you just relax and enjoy the fresh country air, he said warmly. Well, guys, everything was just great, but it's probably time for me to start making breakfast, Beverly said, getting up. I hope you like omelets and hash browns because that's what I'm going to make, she added, giving me a playful look. Breakfast of champions sounds perfect, I replied with a smile. Beverly waved goodbye and went upstairs. After her bedroom door closed, Dave and I went to the backyard to smoke a cigarette and catch up. So, what about her? I asked. I thought she settled down, got married, and had kids. Dave shook his head. No, she never found anyone she could really get close to. She went on several dates, but none of them were good enough for her. Good enough for what? I asked. Dave looked at me seriously. Good enough for you, fool. She's had a crush on you for a long time. I was stunned. This can't be happening, I exclaimed. Absolutely, Dave confirmed. The only reason she kept it from you was Lucy. She didn't want to be the reason for your breakup, Dave said. Are you serious? I asked, taken aback. Like a heart attack, he replied. Why do you think she still has feelings for me? I asked. I heard her say your name in her sleep, Dave reported. That's too much information, I replied. Dave just smiled and took a sip of beer. Well, that's the way it is, he replied. When did Beverly become so attractive? I asked in disbelief. She was always beautiful, you just didn't notice it. You were always focused on Lucy, remember? Dave said. Yes, I remember, I replied. Listen, between you and me, I don't mind if you and she are together. Just do me a favor, okay? Promise me you won't hurt her. I care about my sister, and I know deep down you care about that too. I just don't want her to have her heart broken if it doesn't work out. It will crush her, Dave admitted. I reassured him, I forgot about Lucy, don't worry. He nodded. Okay, I think I'll go to bed. See you in the morning. He got up, stubbed out his cigarette in a nearby jar, and left, going upstairs. I quickly finished my cigarette and climbed into bed. A few minutes later, I fell asleep. As soon as my head hit the pillow, I only woke up when Beverly burst into the room and demanded that I get up. Rubbing my eyes from sleep, I saw that it was already 8:30. I followed my usual morning routine. I took a quick shower, then dressed and went downstairs. As I was getting dressed, I took the ring off my finger and threw it on the dresser. In the kitchen, Beverly was already busy preparing breakfast. She was wearing a short t-shirt and cut-off shorts, her long hair tied in a ponytail, and light bangs framed her face. She was beautiful, and I couldn't believe I hadn't noticed it before. It smells amazing, I commented. She grinned. I'm glad you think so, cowboy. Coffee's ready if you want it. Do you still like butter pecan cream? She asked. Absolutely. Do you have some? I asked in surprise. Oh yes, it's in the fridge. Come on, pour yourself a cup, just don't forget to save some for Dave and me, Beverly said, laughing. I made a cup of coffee and added some cream with southern pecan butter to it, a taste that I love thanks to my father. Dave also became a fan after my father introduced it to him at a construction site. Come and have a seat, she said with a smile. I joined Dave at the table where he was already sitting, engrossed in reading the Sunday newspaper. Good morning, I greeted him. He looked at the newspaper and returned the greeting with a simple, good morning. Is there anything interesting in the news? I asked. Yes, he replied. The newspaper published an article about the arrest of a high-ranking lawyer on a number of charges. Take a look, he said, handing me the newspaper. The article was vague, it did not name names and did not provide details. It was standard news, understandable only to those familiar with the situation. I returned the newspaper with a grunt. Bev had finished making breakfast and was now taking it to the table on a tray. After finishing his breakfast, Dave got up and put away his plate. Then he announced, I need to go to the city and buy some things. I'll be gone for at least a couple of hours. If you need to call the district attorney, you can use your home phone. Thank you, I replied. Beverly handed him a list of necessary things, and he put it in his pocket. Then he took the keys and headed for the exit. I turned to Beverly and asked, do you need help clearing the dishes? Not necessarily, but I would appreciate it. Thanks for asking, she said. When I got up to help her clear the table, she threw me a towel and started washing the dishes that were already in the sink. I noticed that you don't wear a ring. Are you really going to divorce her? She asked. I nodded. I have made it clear that I will not tolerate treason, and I will bring the matter to an end. Okay, she replied with a slight smile. I'm glad to see that you're still standing firm, she added. What's your story? How are you doing? I asked. She shrugged her shoulders. I think it's just fine, Beverly said without taking her eyes off the dishes. Is there someone special in your life? I asked. I used to be, she replied sadly. He was drafted into the army, and even if he hadn't been taken away, I wouldn't have been able to continue the relationship. I was too busy taking care of my parents. That's what people told me, and it was true. After my father died, my mother needed my help. I got a job as a waitress to make ends meet because all she had were her father's debts and some social security. I worked tirelessly until my mom got so sick that she couldn't take care of herself, and then I started caring for her full time, Beverly said sadly. I'm really sorry to hear that, I said sympathetically. Please don't. I don't regret dedicating my time to her, she replied. I just hope that when I reach her age, there will be someone nearby who will lend a helping hand, she said. Curious, I asked, what happened after her mother's death? She explained that they had to sell the house and most of her possessions to cover the remaining expenses. With the help of her father's pension and savings, they were able to pay off all remaining debts. There was a small amount left, which her brother Dave kindly gave her while she was caring for her mother, promising her mother that she would be able to stay with him. She has been living with Dave ever since. He even offered to pay for her college tuition, but she refused, the reason for which remained a mystery. I don't want to depend on anyone, so I'm determined to succeed on my own. I now work at a local McDonald's, where I earn enough to cover my expenses. In addition, I take business courses in the evenings. When I told Dave about this, he reacted enthusiastically. Then he told me that he was thinking of starting a manufacturing business and wanted me to do accounting. Dave often takes on individual projects for local residents, such as making barbecue grills and trailers, says Beverly. He gets a decent income doing this kind of work. His ultimate goal is to work at home in a backyard workshop. Perhaps he will give you a tour when you come to visit him, she said happily. That would be great, I replied with a smile. We fell silent, and I couldn't help but admire her. It was then that I truly saw her beauty, both internal and external. She caught my eye and asked, "What's on your mind?" I replied, "I think I'm looking at the most amazing woman I've ever met." It seemed to me that there were tears in her eyes. "Please stop teasing me," she whispered, looking down. "I'm not teasing you, I just can't help but admire you," I replied. "You put your life on hold for your parents, turned down Dave's offer to pay for college, and now you're making your own way in life. I'm just sorry that I didn't figure it out sooner." She shook her head. "Well, you were blinded by Lucy, so I can't blame you for that," she said. "Yes, you're probably right," I admitted. When she finished washing the dishes, she emptied the sink, wiped her hands, and turned to face me. "She used you," she said. "I knew all along." "Why didn't you say anything?" I asked. "You wouldn't believe me," Bev replied. "I realized that she was right, you were blinded by her. She bewitched you, and you were ready to do anything for her," she added. "All I wanted was for her to be happy," I said sadly. "Now look at the position you're in." "She got everything she wanted, a diploma, a new car, expensive things, and all this at your expense," Beverly said angrily. "I'm glad she's behind bars because if she were here, I'd give her a hard time." "I think you would too," I said, laughing. "There's only one thing I want to know," she said, putting her hands on her hips. "What is it exactly?" I asked. "Will you forgive her tears and take her back?" she asked. I shook my head. "No," I replied. "This ship has already sailed away. It will all be over after Friday," I added. "Okay," she nodded. "And if you ever change your mind, just remember that," she said, pulling her t-shirt over her head, exposing her curves, so that I would never forget about it. She dropped her clothes on the floor, revealing her body to me for the first time. She slowly came up to me, wrapped her arms around me, and gave me the most passionate kiss I've ever felt. At that moment, we made love. "I love you, Stan Shipman. I've always loved you. Never forget that. I'll be yours as long as you're with me," she whispered. "I love you too, Beverly." "I want to be with you always," I replied. "It sounds good, but I don't think my brother would approve," she teased. I giggled and pulled her to me for another deep kiss. And then it dawned on me. I looked at her, a little worried. I suddenly realized that we had not used any means of protection. "Don't worry," she reassured me. "I'm taking pills, and to be honest, I won't mind if you get me pregnant. I will be happy to give birth to your children." I laughed. "I will definitely remember this." We both agreed that we needed to get out before Dave got back. "I need to cook meat for the evening, so why don't you go and take a quick shower," she suggested. "Okay, I'll be back soon," I replied. "Great," she said. "By the way, we usually have a barbecue on Sundays, weather permitting." Do you like venison? Yes, I do, I replied. I really love venison, but it's been many years since I last ate it. The last time I ate it, I shot at myself with Dave's .50 caliber flintlock rifle. I even took the time to carve it in the field with my own hands. It's been a long time, but I still remember the thrill of hunting, Beverly said with feeling. You must be a woman with a tough personality. I must say, your skills have made a great impression on me. I remember seeing Dave's flintlock rifle and being shocked by its size. It seems to be at least 49 inches long. Did you charge it yourself? I couldn't help but ask. Of course, she replied confidently. I even cast the bullet myself. Damn, was all I could say. This woman was really something special. And I also love fishing. I can bait hooks and clean fish myself, she replied proudly. Is there anything you haven't done yet? I asked with a laugh. Well, I haven't restored the gearbox in Dave's truck yet, she teased, but I helped him rebuild the engine. I'm definitely smitten, I said, and she kissed me. I kissed her back, and she told me to take a quick shower before joining me. I hurried upstairs, jumped into the shower, and soon Beverly joined me. We kissed passionately under the hot jets of water, and I wanted to continue. Just wait until tonight when we go to bed. By the way, you're going to sleep with me from now on. My bed is much bigger than the one in your room, Beverly said. Won't Dave be upset? I asked. No, besides, we're both adults, she replied simply. After taking a shower, we got dressed and went downstairs. I need to call the district attorney and tell him where I am, I said. Bev gestured at the cordless phone on the counter. Come on, use this phone, she said. I picked up the phone and called. Almost forgetting that it was a long-distance call, Linda picked up the phone on the second ring, her voice full of concern. Linda Calloway, she said. Linda, this is Stan Shipman. I just wanted to get in touch with you and let you know where I am. Stan, thank God you called, Linda replied. I was already getting worried. I see you're calling long distance. Where are you? I'm staying with an old family friend, I explained. Just in case, I turned off my mobile phone, I added. Well, I will keep you informed of all developments as much as possible, Linda assured me. The feds have already contacted me. It looks like they're checking out the firm your wife works for, she said. I contacted a close friend who is the best divorce lawyer in the county to help with your situation. I hope you don't mind. She's looking forward to your call tomorrow. I told her a little bit about your circumstances, and I think she is the best candidate to solve this issue, Linda said proudly. Thank you. I'll get in touch with her, I promised happily. Linda gave me the necessary details and agreed to inform me about the course of the court session. Dave had returned by then, and I went outside to help him bring in the groceries. When we finished, he said, I called your parents. They were very worried about you. I informed them that you will be staying with us for a while. Thank you, I replied with great gratitude. Later in the evening, we cooked meat on the grill and enjoyed an alfresco dinner on the terrace. After finishing the meal, we all helped to clean up. Dave and I took a break, drank beer, and smoked while Beverly finished cleaning. Hey buddy, are you going to sleep in Beverly's room? Will it be for a long time? Dave asked. It was a little awkward for me to discuss it with him because she was his sister. I think so, I replied. Do you love her? He asked. Yes, I do, I confirmed. Good. It's time for you to move on, he said with a smile. Bev is a strong woman and can take care of herself. I just don't want her to get hurt, he explained. I will never hurt her, I assured him. I'm glad to hear that. Welcome to our family, he said, holding out his hand. I shook it tightly, feeling welcome and accepted. Just don't bother me sleeping all night, okay? Dave said, laughing. I laughed and nodded in agreement. I promised to try my best. Later, after Bev and I shared a passionate moment in her bed, I hugged her and thought about what the future holds for us. At that moment, I felt a sense of peace and satisfaction that I hadn't felt in a very long time. What are you thinking about? Bev's soft voice broke the silence. About the future, I replied. She seemed intrigued. What are your goals in life? Where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years? She asked. I know that these days, women can aim for the top and break through the glass ceiling, she said. But it's not about me. I'm not chasing a career or anything like that. All I really need is a faithful husband who loves me as much as I love him and a family that I can raise. That's all I want. And as for my classes, they're mostly for Dave. When his business goes up, he will need help, Beverly shared with me. As for me, I share your feelings, I replied to her. All I really want is a faithful wife who values me as much as I value her and a family that can be called my own. I thought I found it with Lucy, but it didn't work out, I added bitterly. When she asked about my job, I admitted that I like it, but it often takes me away for a long time. She just laughed and reassured me by mentioning her brothers who also work as welders. She understands the nature of the work and is willing to tolerate separation as long as I return to her home. I stared at her in silence before answering. I wish I'd known you before Lucy, I admitted regretfully. She replied, me too. But we can't change the past. We will handle this together as a team. As long as we are together, we can overcome everything. I will always be by your side, no matter what happens. I bent down to kiss her and said, I love you so much. She replied, I love you even more, hugging me by the shoulders. Fallen asleep, I felt a deep feeling of love that I had not felt for a very long time. The next morning, Beverly woke up before anyone else. After preparing breakfast, she hurried upstairs to get ready for work. Before leaving, she kissed me on the cheek, mentioning that she had classes at school in the evening after her shift. I'll be back by 9:30, so you'll have to take care of yourself. Just remember, no matter what, I love you, and I will always be there for you, she said with a smile. I love you too, I replied, grateful for her words. What about me? Won't I get a kiss? Dave chuckled. Beverly laughed and leaned over to give him a peck on the cheek, giving him a sisterly peck on the cheek. She reminded us not to get into trouble and left. I glanced at my watch and realized it was time to call the divorce lawyer Linda recommended. Dave gestured at the phone, inviting me to make a call. I dialed the number, and a friendly female voice answered, Bernice Goodwin Law Firm. I introduced myself and asked to speak to Bernice, mentioning that she was expecting my call. I didn't listen to music on my phone for long before another woman answered the phone. Bernice Goodwin, she said. How can I help you? This is Stan Shipman, I replied. Linda Calloway gave me your number and offered to call you this morning. Oh yes, Mr. Shipman, Bernice replied. Linda brought me up to date, and I've been waiting for your call. Although I prefer to meet in person for initial consultations, I understand that this time it is not possible. But it's not scary. Currently, we can solve most of this problem online. Please share your story with me and don't miss anything. I explained the situation in detail, and she listened to me carefully. What are your expectations? She asked. When I finished, I want to get as much as I can without alimony and at least a fair share of our funds, I replied. I believe that we can do it. Accusing your wife of a criminal offense should play in your favor, but I need to examine your financial records. Do you have any property like a house? I shook my head. No, we live in an apartment, I informed her. How about taking action against Marie and Jake? She asked. But, to be honest, such lawsuits often do not lead to success. Perhaps it would be more profitable for you to bring a case of intentional infliction of mental suffering, she suggested. In the end, the decision is yours. I told her, okay, I'll study the details carefully and start the process. Could you tell me your email address? She asked. Of course, I replied. Great. I'll send you some necessary documents. One of them is a contract that requires your electronic signature. The other is a checklist that will help you navigate further actions. Please complete these tasks as soon as possible. In addition, I need you to make an advance payment, she asked. Can you do it today? Yes, I can, I replied. Great. I will send this to you, and as soon as everything is ready, I will arrange for the papers to be delivered to you, she said. Do you have any questions? The lawyer asked. No, I replied. I gave her my email address, after which I was switched to her assistant, who collected my credit card information. After the call, I turned on my laptop and checked my email. As expected, an email arrived from Bernice with 2 attached documents. I opened the contract, signed the text with an electronic signature, and sent it back with a receipt to make sure she received it. In addition, there was a document advising me on how to protect myself financially. I expressed my gratitude to internet banking, realizing that it would be useful in this situation. After a while, I successfully opened a new account and transferred half of our savings and checks to it. I paid off and canceled Lucy's credit card but left mine open because I had just used it to pay the commission. When I completed all these tasks, it was already past noon. Dave took me to his workshop where he was fixing a trailer for a local farmer. I helped him a little bit, finding this job surprisingly exciting. About 3 o'clock, the phone rang. Dave took the phone off the extension cord in the workshop and handed it to me. "This is your lawyer," he informed me. When I picked up the phone, I heard Linda's voice. "This is Linda Calloway. Unfortunately, the judge set them a minimum bail, and now they are free," she said. "How is this even possible?" I asked. "Most likely they paid the judge. Fortunately, the protective order has come into force, but I'm afraid it might not be worth more than the paper it's written on. You'd better stay put and stay away from the city. The authorities are monitoring them now, but I can't promise your safety," Linda said. "Great," I sighed. "So what should we do now?" I asked. "You will stay where you are. I will do my best on my part. Call me if you need anything, okay?" Linda asked. "Yes, fine," I replied. We ended the conversation, and I handed the phone back to Dave. "Bad news?" he asked. "Yes, the judge released them," I replied. "Damn it. I should probably call your parents and let them know about it," he said. "I think it's a good idea." "I'll take care of it," I said, taking the phone from him. I dialed my father's number, and he answered on the second ring. "Dad, this is Stan," I said. "How are you, son?" he asked. "It's fine. I just wanted to let you know that the judge has released Lucy and her friends. Maybe you should be on your guard," I informed him. "I have a feeling they might come to find out where I am," I said worriedly. "Don't worry, we won't give them any information." "Are you still at John Harrison's?" The question took me by surprise since he already knew about my location. John Harrison, the retired foreman my father and I worked for, moved to live south of the city after retiring. It suddenly dawned on me that Lucy and her friends were probably there looking for me. "I'm currently staying at a motel about 50 miles south of your place," I informed him. "Okay, just make sure you're safe," he replied. "I'm fine, but I'll leave here in the morning for the east." "I will keep you informed of my location," I assured him. "Okay, let me know where you end up," he asked. "Of course." "Can I talk to Mom?" I asked. "She's busy in the bathroom right now," Dad explained. As I listened, I heard faint sounds in the background. "Please tell her that I'm okay and that I love her," I said. "I will, son," his father promised. There was tension in his voice, and I hoped for his safety. "We'll talk soon, okay?" he said. "I will, Dad." "I love you," I said. "I love you too, son," he replied before hanging up. I turned to Dave and made another call. "How are you, Stan?" Linda answered. "I think Lucy and her friends are at my parents' house," I informed her. "Okay, I'll take a couple of federal agents and go there immediately." "Stay put," we ended the conversation, and I handed the phone back to Dave. "What's going on?" he asked. "I suspect that Lucy and her friends are at my parents' house right now and are trying to find out my whereabouts," I confessed. "I hope they will believe the story I told my father. Maybe we'll have a few hours of peace before they figure out what's going on." Realizing that we only had a limited amount of time before they head to John's house, I wondered if I should leave and find a place to hide. But my interlocutor insisted that we stay together. "Stay where you are," he ordered. "I'm going to clean myself up and go into town to talk to the sheriff." "Stay where you are, okay?" I nodded in agreement, realizing the gravity of the situation. A few hours later, he left the house and headed for the city. Shortly after he left, Linda called me back. "Stan, you were right," she said urgently. "Lucy, Marie, Jake, and several of their accomplices came to your parents after the hearing. They tied them up and threatened them, demanding to know your whereabouts. We notified the authorities and put them on the wanted list. One of their accomplices is now in custody, but he is not cooperating," Linda said. "Do you know where they might be heading?" I asked. "I don't know for sure, but I don't think they bought your story," Linda replied. I asked to speak to my father on the phone, and in a few seconds, he was on the line. "Stan, I don't think they bought it," he said. "Are you okay?" I asked with concern. "We're fine now, but Lucy and her friends can come to you," he warned. "How do you know?" I asked. "I overheard Lucy talking," he explained. "Tell Linda to alert the sheriff," he said. "I'll do that, Dad, and you should be careful too," I assured him. Then the phone was handed over to Linda. "Where exactly are you?" "What is it?" she asked urgently. I informed her of my location and explained the way. "Do you think Lucy is familiar with this area?" Linda asked. "Yes," I replied. "Okay, stay put. We will send someone as soon as possible," she said. After finishing the conversation, I headed for the house. Coming out of the workshop, I recognized the voice. It was Jake. Well, you're trying to trick us, aren't you?" he scoffed. "It's a great attempt to tell your family that you're going south when in fact you were going north. Fortunately for us, Lucy predicted that you would come here. Now let's go," he said, brandishing the gun. "Get in," he ordered, gesturing at the elegant black SUV. I climbed into the back seat and caught Lucy's mischievous gaze. "You thought you could outsmart us, didn't you?" she teased, grinning. "It's not going to end well for you," I said contemptuously. I warned her that the cops were coming soon, but she waved me off. "It's too late for you," she scoffed. "I should have just followed the plan." "Now you're going to pay for it." Marie and Jake laughed at her words, and Jake ordered his accomplice to take us to a secluded place by the stream at the foot of the hill. When we arrived, Jake motioned for me to get out of the car and handed me the gun. "Are you going to kill me?" I asked. When she laughed, "You know what they say, the dead can't talk," she replied. Jake and Marie joined in her laughter as the bandit tied my hands behind my back. When he was done, he made me kneel down. "Let's start with something fun. How about we have some fun outdoors before he passes away?" Lucy suggested with a grin. "Let's give your husband one last show before he leaves," Jake said. "What the hell?" she exclaimed, taking off her clothes. "Come here and make love to me, baby," Jake chuckled and unbuttoned his trousers. "Just imagine, Stan, while your body is decomposing in the stream, Jake will be with me every day," she said with a grin. "I'll be happy to spend your money and pretend to mourn your fate," Lucy said. Jake began to give her pleasure. "Enjoy it," he whispered. "This will be the last thing you'll see." I turned away, unable to watch Lucy and Jake engage in such primitive behavior. "On Earth, I told you that Lucy would explore new things," Marie commented, urging me to enjoy the spectacle because most likely I'd see my wife for the last time. After a while, Jake finished his task and got up hurriedly, getting dressed. I stared at Lucy, unable to comprehend her actions. "Why?" I asked her. "Why did you do that?" She shrugged her shoulders dispassionately. "What can I say? He is richer and more influential than you. Besides, I don't want to spend my whole life married to a welder. I need a social life, and Jake can provide it for me." "Are you two done reminiscing?" Jake interjected. "We have things to do, and it's getting late." He gestured at the man who pushed me forward. Jake walked over to the SUV and returned with a long sword in his hand. "I'm sure you know what's going to happen next, old man," Jake said mockingly. "Don't be afraid, it will happen quickly. You won't feel anything. And now atone for your guilt before God," he said threateningly. I closed my eyes and whispered a prayer. I could feel Jake's presence, and I knew he was raising the sword above his head. Suddenly, a shot rang out in the air. I opened my eyes just in time to see Jake collapse to the ground. Another shot followed, and then the accomplice fell to the ground. Marie tried to grab the gun from Jake, but then another shot rang out, and she fell screaming from the pain and the wound on her shoulder. Lucy, feeling fear, quickly hid behind Jake. In the distance, the distinct noise of an approaching four-wheeled vehicle was heard, signaling its imminent arrival. Trying to make out the approaching car, I only saw a cloud of dust that was getting closer. When it pulled up to us, I saw long blonde hair streaming behind the driver, and I was convinced that it was Beverly. She stopped the four-wheeled car and jumped off, ready to join the chaos. Clutching the hunting rifle tightly in her hand, she quickly took a large knife from her belt and cut the tie binding my hands. As soon as I was free, I sat down and saw her rush to Lucy. With a quick movement, she hit Lucy in the face with the butt of the rifle, causing her to stumble and fall on her back. "Don't you dare raise your hand against my man anymore," she shouted, her voice full of authority. "I swear to God, I'm going to blow your head off. Do you hear me?" Beverly demanded a firm answer from Lucy, who nodded in agreement, fear reflected in her eyes. Lucy screamed in pain, and sirens could be heard in the distance. Beverly quickly grabbed a rocket launcher from the four-wheeled vehicle and fired a flare into the sky to signal for help. Soon, we saw flashes of lights approaching us. "Are you okay, darling?" Beverly asked, coming up to me. "Now yes, you saved my life. I will never be able to repay you for this," I said gratefully. "Trust me, you'll have the rest of your life to pay off," Beverly replied with a smile. Soon, we were surrounded by police cars. Dave arrived in his truck and got out to make sure we were okay. One of the assistants asked for medical assistance and to call the coroner. "Are you okay?" Dave asked, coming up to us. "Now yes, thanks to Bev. She saved my life," I replied gratefully. The sheriff took our statements and monitored further actions. By then, an ambulance had arrived, and paramedics were treating Marie and Lucy. She shot Jake and Ronnie. Marie screamed, "Aren't you going to arrest her?" "I'm sorry," the sheriff said firmly. "This land belongs to Dave, and we have a doctrine of inviolability of property." Miss Brolin was fully justified in defending Mr. Shipman's life. "Consider yourself lucky that she didn't hurt you either." I watched as the assistants handcuffed Lucy and led her out of the room. The sheriff explained that she and Marie would be charged with attempted murder and conspiracy to commit a crime. As soon as the authorities finished collecting evidence and removing the bodies, we were allowed to leave. I drove the four-wheeled car with Beverly to the house. "I got the impression that you have classes today. What happened?" I asked Beverly. "Dave came into McDonald's and brought me up to date, which made me take time off from work and hurry home to make sure you were okay. I noticed tire tracks on the grass and followed them to the place where you were. I quickly climbed onto the deer rack that I had set up, and when I saw what Jake was going to do, I began to act. Don't worry about the fact that I missed classes. I'll make up for everything. Your well-being is my top priority," she said happily. "I can't tell you how grateful I am for saving my life," I whispered. I immediately called Linda to inform her of the situation. She breathed a sigh of relief when she found out that I was okay. After that, I called my parents to inform them about what had happened. They were relieved to learn that everything ended well, I said. Later that evening, I thanked Beverly for saving my life. Marie recovered from her wounds, and she and Lucy were put on trial for attempted murder and conspiracy to commit a crime. They were found guilty and convicted on charges stemming from my initial assault and unlawful detention. Both received life sentences, and they were also charged with additional charges related to conspiracy and racketeering by the firm. Throughout this whole ordeal, I've only encountered them twice. The first time was when Bev and I were called to testify, and the second time was when they were sentenced. In both cases, they looked disheveled and defeated, which made me smile. As a result, none of them will ever experience freedom again, and this thought brought me great satisfaction. Beatrice successfully completed the divorce process and, thanks to her firm beliefs, convinced the judge not to provide Lucy with anything as part of the settlement agreement. In addition, she secured the allocation of a significant amount from the inheritance of Marie and Jake. As a result, I was up to my ears in money, although Bernice got her share. I was more than happy with my share. In addition, the firm has reached a significant settlement to drop numerous federal charges against me and Beverly. After all was said and done, Lucy's firm had to be shut down, and the partners were sentenced to life in prison. All this happened within a short 6-month period. When it was over, I saved up enough money so that Beverly and I could live comfortably for many years. I bought her a beautiful ring and got down on one knee to propose to her. She was beside herself with happiness and showered me with kisses. A month later, we tied the knot and celebrated with a week-long trip to Las Vegas. When we returned, we sat Dave down in the living room to discuss our proposal. His eyes widened in surprise when we suggested the idea of doing custom welding and manufacturing in a well-known company. "Are you serious?" I replied confidently. Beverly then showed her spreadsheet with the detailed business plan she had created. After studying it carefully, he leaned back in his chair. "You know, I think it might work," he added, reaching into his pocket. He took out a bunch of keys and handed them to us. "Do you know that section on the south side?" he asked. "Yes, but what about it?" I asked. "Did you see that there is a new 2-story house on it?" he inquired. "Yes, we thought you had sold this plot," I replied. "No, it's your wedding present for you and your parents," he said, looking at me. "It's brand new and equipped with the latest technology. By the way, the land and the house are registered in your name. Your father and I have already removed all your belongings from the apartment, except of course those with Lucy's photo on them." I was speechless. Of course, I could afford to build a custom house. I began, but Dave wasn't listening to anything. The 2-family house was impressive, as sturdy as traditional houses built of wood. I wasn't going to be ungrateful, knowing that this place must have cost them a tidy sum. "Thank you, partner," I said, holding out my hand for a handshake, but instead, we ended up in a man's bear hug. "Are you going to be okay?" Beverly asked, worried. "I don't want to see you alone." "I'll be fine," he replied. "Actually, I can finally get a good night's sleep." "I'm tired of listening to you scream all night long," Dave said with a laugh. We had a party in the evening, and I called my parents to express my gratitude for their gift. After that, Beverly and I solemnly opened the bedroom. As we lay huddled together, I couldn't help but feel optimistic about our future. It is true that money attracts friends, some of whom have connections with people in trouble. Lucy and Marie were going through hard times in prison. They were forced to clean toilets, given a toothbrush each, and had to satisfy the special preferences of many prisoners by doing favors for them. It seems that Marie and Lucy will soon begin to look at life more broadly.